Bungie has just kind of blown my mind with building this DLC because there's so many possibilities. The artifact has got a ton of new cool stuff, and building has just never been this big in past DLCs. There's always been like that one size fits all type building, and it just doesn't exist. And it's kind of overwhelming to make content for one specific build to tell you that it's the overall just best build ever, because that would be lying to you. And I've been spending a ton of time just to make sure that when you got a Restow build on, that it's the absolute best thing you can have pertaining to a particular activity. There's a lot of stuff we got to talk about in this video, so let's hop into it. Sit back, hit subscribe, and become beast. Now this build is going to be for every Guardian. We're just using that Warlock as the example Guardian, but your stats are the same as any previous DLC. 6+ traction, 7 or 8 mobility, but 6 in traction is 7 mobility. Highest recovery you can get, either 7 or higher, and what's left over with that discipline. The harder the activity, the higher the light it is, especially for that Grandmaster, the faster the adds and their shots are going to be. So making sure you got your mobility value right is really going to be a key thing this DLC. I recommend Void with all subclasses with any Guardian you're using. Bottom tree Devour is what we're going to be doing for the Warlock. Top tree or bottom tree with the Hunter, or mid tree or top tree with the Titan, all on Void though. When it comes to your leg piece, we're going to start it off with that because this is a crucial and staple piece for this DLC, using Protective Light, either Special Ammo Scavenger because it's a Void piece, or Enhanced Sword Scavenger, which is part of the Artifact perk, and then Minor or Major Resist with that Protective Light. When it comes to resist mods, always remember resilience doesn't matter in PvE, it's all about those resist mods, and resilience is really just for PvP. But this DLC, if you're under light for whatever activity you're doing, having 3 is going to be the magic number if you're under light. 3 minor resist is going to allow you to get 8 shots before your shield gets busted, and then a total of 14 shots before you die from any weaker type adds such as the Scion. But even against a Thrasher, a red bar Thrasher, having 3 minor resist on is going to let you survive one of their slashes without getting your shield busted. But just know that a rule of thumb is if you're under light, 3 is going to be that magic number, whether it's a minor, major, or boss resist. 0 against this champion, blowing me backwards, and 2 against that champion under light will bust my shield, but if I have 3, I can still survive it without getting my shield busted. So just keep that as a rule. I'm going to be mix matching them a lot depending on whatever activity that I'm doing. If it calls for more minor resist or more major resist, I'm going to adjust it depending on that activity basically. But Protective Light, even though it is a past DLC perk, which I talked about in the past, just because it's old doesn't mean that it's useless. Protective Light is going to be a key player, so make sure that you have that leg piece ready with that minor resist, either a Special Scavenger or that Sword Scavenger, and then traction. Now starting with the helmet, it's going to be the stats that you see. I'm using another minor resist, loadout with all the finders that you're going to need. You are going to be able to use a fusion rifle for Exodus Crash, and then also shield break charge. Anytime you break a shield, you become charged with light. That's going to go towards your Protective Light. My Titan in this video is 962 light versus these 1k enemies, just to show you how much resilience you get by having Protective Light. I can't stress enough about how important it's going to be to open up these kind of strategies when it comes to Grandmaster or higher type difficulties this DLC, but mainly Grandmaster. The ability to just pop a shield and get Protective Light in the blink of an eye like that is going to be really crucial to have. There's probably going to be a lot of situations where you're just pinned down, and being able to just pop out, bust their shield, you know you have that Protective Light going on, and then you can actually let them get their shield back and then shoot it again to get a charge of light ×2, which will give you a 9-second resilience instead of 4 to 5 seconds. So don't sleep on shield break charge. It's going to be one of the most clutch things you can have this DLC with all the extra shielded enemies we're going to be met with in Grandmaster. I spent an enormous amount of time doing Exodus Crash solo and with the fire team, so I'm going to let you know right now that you don't need seraph weapons or seraph armor mods in the Exodus Crash. Of course they work and they do a pretty cool job, but the amount of time that I spent in Exodus Crash having to use seraph weapons just ended up slowing me down, because we all don't have a lot of the seraph weapons in the game right now. I don't, at least, and I'm sure that a lot of you don't either. And those weapons like the auto rifle and stuff, it's kind of just too weak for legendary and master, the time to kills and stuff. And there's way better options that I'm going to show you in this video. And since I had to use bottom tree Devour and I couldn't use Tyrant with the art class, because when it comes to that boss battle, it's just congested with so many adds, and Devour is more crucial than having seraph weapons on or seraph armor mods on. Devour is really where you want to go when it comes to Warlock, and then mid tree, top tree Titan, and then top tree, bottom tree if you're on a Hunter. But like I said, just because it's not on this build video, this is just build number 1 of the season. I am going to have seraph armor mods and weapons in the future videos when it comes to Grandmaster builds, but for Exodus Crash, trust me, it just wasn't needed at all, and it really is just a waste of time to use that assault rifle. When you see the weapon loadout that I'm using for Exodus Crash, it'll make more sense, and then when you have Devour to go along with this, you'll see why I didn't choose seraph armor or the seraph weapons. Now when it comes to the arm piece, which is going to be another one of my Grandmaster staple pieces, because we're going to be rushing to get those finishers on champions as soon as that icon pops up, and they're probably going to be surrounded by enemies or getting ready to stomp you, and having finishing charge is going to be extremely clutch to have, especially with the other perks that we're going to be seeing as well. I'm going to give you an example of this right now. This Titan is at 962 light, and by doing that finisher and getting charged with light by that, and getting protective light, allowed me to survive that stomp. Situations like that are going to happen all the time in Grandmaster. Here's another situation of things that can just happen basically. I'm going to go up, I'm going to melt him. Again, my Titan's at 962 light. I'm going to hit that finisher on him. Now I'm charged with light. I'm still in the middle of the combat area basically, and I can get melted extremely fast. But luckily I got that finisher, my shield just got busted. Now watch my health meter as I'm trying to get away, and having that resilience for just that amount of time is going to come in clutch all the time in Grandmaster, because you're always going to be getting your shield busted and having a lot of possibilities to get, finisher charges, to get the shield break charge on the numerous amount of ads that are going to have shields. It may not make sense now or in this video, but I promise you, and I can't stress enough how important those are going to be, because every time you see a champion with that finisher on his head, you're going to be darting for it, because not only is it going to be hard to take those champions down, they're probably going to be surrounded by a lot of other enemies that also have shields on. They're going to be hard to take down, and those champions need to go down faster than anybody. So the fact that you can get protective light to go with that to protect you for those limited number of revives you're going to have based on the amount of champions you kill, it's going to be really important, even though it might not seem like it right now. But again, for Exodus Crash or for Grandmaster, shield break charge, finisher charge, and the protective light, those are 3 clutch perks that are going to matter in the most difficult situations in Grandmaster, against champions and against shielded enemies, which are going to be in many numbers. If you watch that brief clip Bungie released of Grandmaster, you can see that champion that had the arc shield and he had an anti-barrier shield. So would it be cool if when you bust that arc shield, boom, you're protected with light, and then you're protected to stand toe-to-toe with him for a second to try to pop his shield, and then once you drop his health enough, he's going to have that finisher above his head, then you can go finish him, get charged with light again. So building out for the hardest situations that you're probably going to encounter is really what I'm getting at, and why those are probably going to be stable pieces based on what I know in the game at this moment. And it also works for Exodus Crash as well, because you're going to be finishing a lot of ads there, and there's a lot of shields you can bust there on those shanks. But let's move on to the other armor build pieces, and we'll go over more situations as the video plays out. But I do want to mention for the chest piece that this is before the unlocked passive guard. So for the time being, I have charged up, which is a ×3 charged with light, which equals a 12-second protective light when my shield's busted. However, when I do get passive guard unlocked, I'm going to be putting taking charge on the chest piece and not have charged up. So I just want to mention that. But I'm going to show you what happens when you have charged up. You can see right there, I just busted 3 red bar shields, and I also have Devour going, and I have the sword to go on top of that, so I can remain up close in the enemy's face, have Devour, and have that 12 seconds going on that is still going on a protective light resistance for the times that I am hit before I get Devour. But whenever you have taking charge, which every time I get double kills with my sword, if it's masterworked, I'll be dropping orbs, picking those up, and becoming charged with light every time I pick those orbs up, which is then going to go to protective light. Now for the final piece, the mark, cloak, or the bond. I'm going to be using that passive guard choice you see at the bottom. I'm going to be using special finisher, recuperation, and then a minor or major depending on what activity that I'm doing. And then taking charge will be moved to the chest piece, and I won't have charged up to get that 12 seconds of resilience from protective light. But I think taking charge is more important, because every time you get a double kill, it drops an orb. You touch that orb, you can charge with light. I think it's a little more beneficial than having charged up. But if you currently don't have passive guard unlocked, you can actually have both of these. Taking charge, the healthy finisher, and what you see in front of you, and then charged up on the chest piece, which is pretty beneficial to have both of them. Shout out to clanmate Uteppers, who actually took his time to go ahead and make this video for y'all. You can actually click in the video link above if you want to see his full test basically, but he found out that passive guard actually gives you a 50% damage buff every time you have that on, and you're within 20 meters of enemies when you have a sword on. In the clip that you're seeing first, it's going to have it with the passive guard and him holding a sword. You can see how he maintains his health standing in his rift, and then in the second clip, he switches it to his primary weapon, where passive guard won't be affecting anything, and you can watch his health meter get destroyed. But like I said, use the first or second option. Healthy finisher is also clutch as well, because in those situations where you are finishing a champion or any kind of ad that's surrounded by other ads, getting full health isn't that bad. And again, by having the finisher charge, every time you do that, you're going to get your health back and become charged with light to prepare yourself for any other ads that are around that might bust your shield. And also, I'm going to be making seraph armor mod builds in the future, and all this stuff will basically change, but some of it will remain the same. Now let's hop into the weaponry so I can show you what I'm using, why I choose certain archetypes over another, and we'll start it off with the SMG. When it comes to 900 RPM SMGs, Trackless Waste is normally the one that I like the most, and still is actually. This looks like a beast roll, overflow, and then it also has osmosis. Whenever I throw a grenade, whatever subclass I'm on, I start doing that damage burn basically. I'll show you an example of this right now with the overflow perk. So right now I'm shooting just kinetic, I throw the grenade, and now I'm doing arc damage. Pretty beast to have, and I do recommend probably having this perk during Grandmaster if you have to build out for all 3 style champions. Having osmosis might not be a bad choice, and you can see right here with the overflow, every time I pick up special ammo or heavy ammo, it does an abnormal amount of rounds in the magazine and actually doubles it to 80 rounds instead of 40 rounds. Pretty nice to have, but you kind of have to watch out for guns that come with perks like that because it usually means they're risky to use, and I'll show you an example of this right now. I always like to build out when I'm under light, and I am right here. I'm actually 968 light, and I'm just going to show you how inaccurate this weapon is, even at this range. Now, if a gun can work and do work at this light level, I know that it's only going to get better with time and as my light increases. That's why I don't like these though, because you just can't hold this kind of gun steady. Even when you're like point blank right in their face, it just, even with scattered projectile targeting, it still doesn't even hold target that well. I do like the Trackless Waste, and I'm going to show you examples of both of these, but let's take a look at them side by side. They're both 900 RPM, but the one on the left will do more crit shot damage than the Trackless Waste on the right, which actually does more body damage. But I always like more body damage on SMGs because it's normally hard to hit crit shot continuously using SMGs, so I like having that more body damage. And the 2 pictures of the guns you're seeing was after I had upgraded a little bit, but the footage you're watching right now is when I was at 968 light, and these guns were around 970 and 971. But look how much accurate the Trackless Waste is, and even though I can't bust a shield, it reloads fast enough to still catch it before he can put his shield back down. So even though I'm under light, I can still bust shields on champions that are like 32 light ahead of me at this time. But if I go to escape velocity and put it on, it can't bust a shield, and it still isn't fast enough to reload to catch it before he puts it away. So I'll just sit here and do this over and over until I finally just run out of ammo. So for me to break shields at this light level, I pretty much have to rely on the overflow perk that comes on this weapon to even break shields and even compete against the light level of these ads. Now I'm going to show you the Trackless Waste that I recommend farming out that is different from the God roll that I used to use in the past. This one's actually 11 light lower than the 2 SMGs you just saw, but it has high impact reserves and can ramp up and still compete. Even though this weapon's around 659 light, it can still compete. So this is the one that I decided to masterwork because it has armor piercing rounds and high impact reserves on it. I wish it had threat detector, but it came with grave robber. I got this off of a wanted target, but you can farm it at the menagerie. I recommend doing a stability or a ranged masterwork. The footage you're seeing now is after I'm higher light. This was when the weapon's around 971 light, which wrecks now that I'm actually a way higher light in the game. But when it comes to my main SMG that I'm going to be using, it's always going to be this one. If I have to use a different type weapon or energy weapon or whatever, I'd probably go with Traveler's Judgment that has shield disorient or shield disruption as well as rapid hit. But we'll talk about that weapon in another video. I just want to talk about the ones I'm using for Exodus Crash right now. But here's the role that I recommend farming out. Everything that you see here, except I wish that I had threat detector or that stability or range masterworked. Like I said, you can farm this out and make sure it has wolf.w2 that has the highest zoom for a scope on Trackless, which is a 4. And it also is the highest range scope in general you can get on Trackless Waste. Obviously the armor piercing rounds only works whenever the shield gets put up, but it does that extra bonus damage, which is around like 7 to 8%. I'm not exact on that, but it seems like it's around that when I compare the numbers. And then again, whenever I get to the end of the magazine, it ramps up that 20% because of the high impact reserves. So I think that's probably the best SMG as far as the ones you can get in the game and farm out. Now on to the energy weapon that I recommend farming or finding in the game. Shield Disorient is really beast for a solo weapon or an in-game weapon as well, or if you're lucky enough to find the God roll with Lead from Gold and Demolitionist. Either one of those are my 2 favorites. I have Ionized Battery on this one as well. I don't have Torch HS3, I have Flash HS5, which is okay, but definitely not Torch. And you can see this quick footage right here with the shield break charge. That quick, I get charged with light times 3 to go with protective light. And you're going to see situations like this throughout this entire Nightfall. So whether this is a Grandmaster or Legendary or Master, these shielded enemies are still going to be there, and every time you bust them, you're going to get charged with light, and they're also going to get disoriented because I have shield disorient on there as well. So it's pretty beast to have, and really great for this Nightfall. That's the reason that I'm not using the seraph weapons, because there's really not any competitors that are unlocked in the game right now that you can get. For me anyways, and probably for a lot of other players, these far outweigh any kind of seraph weapon. And if you want to use the seraph Warmind cells, you got to have those weapons on, or you can use Arc with Tyrant, which I don't really recommend because Devour, again, far outweighs what Tyrant can do in this. Even though those Warmind cells are beast, having those 8 rounds for bigger targets, being able to disorient targets, and the fact that this is going to be like a legendary to get 100k, it's faster and more efficient to use these weapons in this build than it was to use Seraph currently in the game at the moment. It might be a better option in the future, but I have my fastest times and easier times soloing through areas by having this on versus having the Seraph on. Even though the Seraph and the Warmind cells are beast, trust me, this is going to be a way better option to get 100k doing legendary. When it comes to swords, I recommend everybody farming out a Striker Surehand with either Surrounded or Whirlwind Blade. I like Enduring Blade the most because it has the most ammo and swords hit hard already. And then for your guard, I recommend Enduring Guard, even though I don't have it on this current sword. But like I was saying, Surrounded and Assassin's Blade go really beast together. Surrounded is procced quite a bit in this Nightfall. It does 30% damage, and then Assassin's Blade does 15% damage. Another version you could farm out will be Tireless Blade and Whirlwind. Whirlwind also does 30%. As you're slashing away, it keeps ramping up to a ×5, which is the end 30%. And then when you have Assassin's Blade with Whirlwind Blade, you can farm that out too. That would be 45% damage until Whirlwind fell off. I think Whirlwind's probably the better option. However, Surrounded is still really good and clutch when it needs to be. But when it comes to any kind of champion, especially overload champions, being able to keep slashing and keep building up bonus damage over and over to that 30% is going to be really clutch in Grandmaster activities. Here's the Swordmaster guard you're seeing right here. You can watch as the health kind of gets drained on it. Enduring guard blocks quite a bit and a lot longer. But when you're doing any kind of overload champions, it's better to do the power swing over and over because it holds them in place. And even though you don't have a charged swing, it only takes 1 away and still does bonus damage. And then we'll do that finisher to become Charge of Light to get ready for the next group of ads. But I did a lot of testing against overload champions, and I kept seeing that this was a better option by just hitting the big swing over and over again. Even though you can do a lot of damage by slashing away on them and doing some cool combos and stuff like that, they're still going to stay put as it is unless that changes in Grandmaster and they're able to still get out of that. But if you just keep doing this, it only takes 1 ammo, it does 10,000 damage at the light level that I'm at, and then doing the slashes does 9,000. But if I'm using Whirlwind, which I'm not in this footage, I'm using Surrounded, it would do 30% more damage. But doing slashes over and over, as you're seeing, it does stun them whether you're doing big swings or little swings, but I just felt like every time I would do the little swings, I just kept wasting a lot of ammo. I know a lot of players are probably sick of doing forges and farming and things like that, but I mean, when you get a complete god roll that can change your end game, it's worth it in the end. There's really not anything else to do until Grandmaster besides build and to farm out these weapons that are going to be useful in the Grandmaster, so I recommend if you have the time, do it now, get your weapons set, because it'll come in handy later for sure. Here's a situation again with the protective light, standing toe-to-toe with this ad. I get my shield busted, but I'm still able to stand toe-to-toe because I have the protective light resilience on, and that's just one of the things that's going to be really clutch in this whole DLC is protective light and increasing your survivability and being prepared for any kind of target you face. Again, shield break charge on him, he's also disoriented, have Surrounded on that sword, taking him out rather quickly, again with the Surrounded, and again with Devour going with this build as well. But I probably won't be using too many Devours on the Grandmaster. I might still, but those Warmind cells are going to be extremely useful to blow a lot of targets up. And I also like the Suppressor one, probably my favorite to be honest, because to be able to stagger an entire room, especially when I'm probably not going to be near 1060 light, to be able to stagger a whole room to then take them out with weaponry and things like that, if the Warmind cells can't do it, I think the staggering is a little more beneficial. Here's a situation of better already that I always talk about, how it can be a risky move on builds sometimes. I'm about to get my shield busted, and then I'm going to pick up this orb, and it's going to start recharging my health, but because I'm hit at the recharge level, it's going to cut that recharge off and force me outside of battle for a second to have to plant a rift instead of being able to be out there and start slaying. That's just one thing I always hated about Better already, and why I always chose recuperation, because if I'd have touched that orb, I would have immediately gotten 70% health instead of that, you know, recover start crap that it does. That's why I don't like it at all. Just kind of a risky move on builds. Again, with the high impact reserves and the armor piercing rounds, and then surrounded on the sword, bust that dude down. But I know there's a ton of seraph mods coming out. I know all the ones that are coming out, and I am going to be building with quite a bit of them in future builds, but there are going to be some stable perks. I know Protective Light is going to be one of those perks, and Shield Break Charge more than likely, because I know there's going to be a lot of shields needing their shield busted, and I need to make sure that I'm always prepared with that recovery, and also prepared with that extra resilience from Protective Light, because there's only going to be a limited number of revives in Grandmaster that's going to be based and increased as you kill champions. But I hope you enjoyed this video, Guardian. That's really all I have for you in this video. There's still a ton more to come, though. A lot of builds that are just kind of overwhelming to make one video about, because it would be like an hour-long video. But I do know a way that you can make these master in-game builds without having to change around too many pieces of armor. So you only need a set few pieces that I'll be talking about in the near future. We're also going to go over some new weaponry, a whole lot of new things that I want to cover this DLC. Just trying to find the time to put it in the correct order in a video to explain it to people, and putting the time in again to test and do all the research and things that I need to do. But you Guardians, take it easy. If you want to join our Beast Squad, also hit subscribe for more content. I highly appreciate that. Also, you can join our Discord and chat with us anytime. Some diehard Guardians that live and breathe Destiny and all its content and all its glory. Again, Guardian, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for watching. See you all in the next video next time.
In space.